Denise, thank you very, very much for joining me on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much, Gary. I'm so excited to be here.
Firstly, so I did do a bit of a teaser there on the bio. Let's talk about the events that led you to the retreat and then the retreat experience itself.
Okay. Yeah, you covered the work stress pretty well. I was not a popular person. Through the investigations and as a hearing officer, I was sitting in conference room for hours on end as different people filed in with the employee and their union. And the other side was the district representative, like the either a legal attorney or an advisor for the principal of the school. And everyone laid out what had done the infraction. I knew what the job was when I took it, but I had no idea that I would be hearing these horrendous stories. Um, it was very heavy, very negative, very angry, very fear based. And like I changed my seating so I'm near the door, like a lot. There's a lot going on. Um, so what brought me to the Vipassana retreat was I was basically freaking out with the choice that I'd make to take this job. I've been doing it for almost a year now, probably about 8 months, and mindfulness was starting to pick up a bit. I had read the Dan Harris book, 10% Happier, and I bought it for like 10 people that I knew. And I'm like, I'm going to do this mindfulness thing. So I started trying to practice mindfulness, and I found there's a mindfulness based stress reduction course at the University of Massachusetts. So I'm like, I'm going to take this course, it's going to change me. So I signed up for the course, and part of it, which I jumped way ahead to see, was that the mandatory attendance of any retreat. And I'm like, I'm going to do a spa. I'm going to do a spa day, spa
Spa.
week, whatever. So I found the Vipassana 10-day silent retreat, and I thought that's exactly what I need is silence. And it's donation based. So I could afford it. It was in 29 Palms, California, so it wasn't far away. So I made all the arrangements. I applied. I talked to my family, my work, and off I went to this retreat that little did I know was not going to be relaxing in any way, shape, or form. But boy, did it change me. I was right about that.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. So you get the opportunity to go. It's born from a motivation of a life experience that you're not truly enjoying at that
Yeah.
particular time. Then you go to the retreat, sorry, the spa, as you think. Talk us through the 10 days, specifically the first few days. I know that when we were having our pre-conversation, that was I don't know what the best word is, shocking in some way to you, but I'd love for the listeners to hear a bit of your experience.
Okay, yeah. So I did convince a friend to go with me, and we swore that we would never make eye contact or speak. So we were like completely avoiding each other. But we get to the retreat, and it's in the middle of the desert. It's just like this, like a hall with a bigger hall up higher on a mountain, all desert, a couple trees. It was in February, Valentine's week, actually. And we go inside, and all of these people are just migrating in. And there was actually 32 men and 32 women. And we're all in this big cafeteria. And we have to sign in at the table. And we're signing for following the rules, which are absolute noble silence, no contact with anyone of any kind, no eye contact, no killing of any life. You can't kill a bug, no snacks, like all of those kinds of things. And then as you sign this contract, they ask your car keys, your phone, your watch. If you have anything to journal with, you cannot read. You can have your clothes and your bedding, and wash your face at night.
Yeah.
That's basically it. Um, I the anxiety when you have to hand your phone over to someone for 10 days, like it was ridiculous, like how attached I realized I was. And I'm like, can I text my family? So you text your family, you're goodbye, I'm going dark, and give them the phone number for the retreat. If there's an emergency, they said they would put your name on a board and you go see someone if something awful happened. But you're basically handing over everything that you know in your life, and you are in this situation where you are completely disconnected and solely in your head 24/7. So when I got to my room after all of this, I was kind of a hot mess and I did a lot of breathing. And then we had to go to our space, which was super interesting. So the men and the women are completely separated after the initial meeting.
Yeah.
So now there's 32 women walking up the hill to go to this meditation hall. And there's 32 squares that are marked off by tape that are like maybe 3 foot by 3 foot. And you could put your meditation pillow there and a blanket. A lot of people brought Kleenex. And I was like, maybe they'll be crying. I don't know. So you set up your little space, and that's where you're going to spend 12 to 14 hours a day for the next 10 days in that spot. Um, it was really overwhelming. The only other thing that there was to do besides eat there, and the food was unbelievable vegan food. I've never had such fabulous food in my life.
Wow.
There was a walking path that was probably just short of a mile. And I came in with the attitude, I'm not exercising. I'm here to decompress.
I'm on
Oh my gosh,
holiday.
that walking path became my very best friend in the world. I was on it all the time if I wasn't on my meditation pillow. A
Yeah.
lot to process.
Yeah. So what sort of journey did you go through in the beginning when we were chatting? It's 10 days for a reason, and there are
Yeah.
different experiences that you experience going through. What were the main highlights in the beginning, and then as you get ready essentially to go back into normalcy?
Okay. Yeah. So there are so many stages. Um, when you start, it's called anapana breathing, and for 3 days you are just focusing on the breath, the airflow out of your nostrils in your nostrils. Is it more in one nostril? Do you feel it on your upper lip? For hours. So the basic daily setup is someone comes around with a gong, walking the facility. You have your own little cabin for the most part, and you share a bathroom between you. Someone's walking around with a gong at 4:30 in the morning. So you wake up, you're like, okay, it's time. This actually became my very favorite part of the day. You like put on your slides, put a big blanket around you, and you just start walking up the hill to the meditation hall. You leave your shoes outside and go in and sit in your square. And there's some beautiful chanting in the morning, every morning, that you're listening to by S.N. Goenka is his name. He's the father of Vipassana meditation. And it's just coming through on speakers. And it's just lovely. And you're just focusing on your breathing. And then you get a lovely breakfast, and there's time to shower. And then you go back for your, between morning and afternoon meditation. You sit for hours again. And now it's just silence and you're breathing. And then you have lunch and again, and so forth throughout the day. And then at the end of every day, there's something called a discourse summary, where they wheel in this old TV and they turn it on, and it's this picture. It's him, S.N. Goenka, and he's speaking these words of wisdom about what has happened to you today, what you're feeling right now, which was so on point, Gary. It was
Yeah.
insane. But yeah, he's like saying, this is what's happening. This is what your body is feeling. The craziest part to me about the first couple days is the the aching of your body. Like, it is physically painful to just sit still for that long.
Wow.
And aside from the physical pain that you're feeling because you're just sitting, and you can shift, but they want you to stay as still as you can.
Yeah.
Your mind just starts to go loopy. Like, I'm having conversations with myself and my mind, like, how you have monkey mind where you're just thinking and your thoughts are going everywhere. Well, it kind of turns into a split personality thing when you can't have any communication with anyone.
Yeah.
So I'm talking and I'm answering, and I'm talking and I'm answering. I'm like, holy crap, this is just insane. When you're walking the loop, you are making up stories about everyone's life in your head,
Yeah.
because your mind is there's so lack of stimulus, your mind is just
Yeah.
overcompensating for all of
Yeah.
that. So that was the first couple of days. Do you want me to go on?
Please do.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then on day 4, we learned the evening of the third that you now will be starting Vipassana, which is the real form of meditation. And what you're doing is you're picturing a 2 inch square starting from the top of your head and going like everywhere but you're waiting until you feel anything. If you feel any vibration, any movement, anything, and then you move and you move, and you do this from the top of your head to the tip of your toes and back up again all day long, every day for 12 hours. So at this point, it was kind of more stressful for me because I was thinking I could do a body scan at home. Like, this isn't doing anything for me.
Yeah.
But a lot was happening on the inside that I wasn't aware of. So it's funny because, well, I'll tell you that in a second. So I go through all of this and I'm going day by day. And first of all, there was one cheat that I had. I have to be totally honest. I have a terrible memory, and I was so worried I was going to forget about this experience. And they took my journal literally when I walked in the door. And I was like, I have to just write down some stuff. I have to. I will forget and I will kick myself because I don't know if I'll be able to do this again.
Yeah.
So at lunch one day, I took a stack of the little napkins and I found a pen in my bag.
Yeah.
So I'm just like writing these little napkin notes in the tiniest writing so I can remember what day one was and day two. And thank God, because now it unfolds perfectly in my book. But as you're going through days 4, 5, 6, it's just so like there's a lot of anxiety that's building. And I was like someone cut me in line at one point, and I'm like thinking this person is not self-aware at all, and they're so selfish, and you start to like separate from yourself a bit. And I'm like, why am I spending my time in this perfect situation worrying about this woman that just bumped into me and cut me in line?
Yeah.
I have to let go of that. Like, it's ridiculous. So I'm like, not going to waste my time on that. It's all going to be good. Like, we share a bathroom, me and whoever I didn't know. I go in and there's water everywhere. It's a mess. And I'm like, really? You can't wipe down the sink? And then I'm like, no, like, I'm not going to let myself go there.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of internal struggle. Then on the sixth night, I had my dark night. And so I feel horrified for people that were not prepared that this could happen, because being an educator, right? I read so much about this retreat. I knew I wasn't really going to a spa, but I knew there would be a lot of stuff that might happen.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be ready for it. And I had read about the dark night, and I didn't really know what caused it or what it was. But the night I went to bed on the sixth night, I am like kind of drifting into sleep, and I'm feeling like just stuff on me. And I had been so paranoid anyway because you can't kill a bug. And there are snakes, like 2 snakes had crossed my path when I was walking.
Yeah.
And I was scared to death there was going to be one in my bed. I'm like checking everything every night, but I'm like, there's spiders on me. So I get up, I go in the bathroom, I look, nothing. So I lay back down, I'm falling asleep, spiders. Now spiders are coming out of my ears, like it was insanity. I was hallucinating. I'm like, why? What is happening to me? But I just kept breathing, and I'm like, this isn't real. This isn't real. You got this. It's okay. Breathing my way through it. In the morning, I physically had some scratches on my face because I was just doing it all night. And
Right.
when I got home for like 2 months, my husband was like, you're still touching your face all night. So
Oh,
it lingered into my
yeah.
life long after the retreat. But I got through that, still had that on my seventh day too. But the seventh day meditation, I don't know what was different. I don't know if it was because I had just had the dark night, if what was happening with my energy. Gary, I cannot even explain in any of the most beautiful words what happened to me. I absolutely completely disappeared. I was like just engulfed in this radiance of love that is it's like it's even hard to talk about now. This has been 8 years.
Yeah.
It completely engulfed me. I wasn't me. I wasn't there. I wasn't separate anymore. I was just like part of this love that was just overwhelming. And
Yeah.
I have no idea how long it lasted, I just know that like when I became conscious of what was happening again, like tears are pouring down my face. I was doing the awful, like when you've been really crying.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, I don't know what happened to me, but it was the most amazing thing that I'd ever had happen to me in my life.
Fantastic.
And I was like, I like, this was it. This was why I'm here. This is the purpose. This is it. Like, this is God and love and the universe that's in all of us, and we're all a part of, and we're all connected. And it absolutely changed my life. So the rest, I mean, those were definitely the highest points. The next couple days played through. I was just in my glory. At the end, um, at the last Discord night, so it was say the ninth night, they said, you will be tomorrow, you'll be at like 3 o'clock or whatever during the day, you'll hear a gong, and that will be the end of the noble silence. So then I'm thinking, like, I've been with these 32 women for 10 days. Like, we've passed each other. So is anyone going to talk? Is it going to be quiet? Like,
Yeah.
I was a little bit nervous about what might happen next. But that gong sounded, and everyone was just, it was like you suddenly weren't a zombie anymore. And everyone's eyes connected, and we were like, oh my God. And people just sat down on the ground in front of like where the cabins were. And we were just, what happened to you? Did you have a dark night? Like, oh my God, I disappeared. Some people got physically ill from their dark night, like they were vomiting,
Wow.
they had a migraine. Like, some people hallucinated. One woman was telling me her face kept melting off. She was like trying to keep her face on. It was the craziest thing to hear everyone's stories.
Yeah.
The woman that I had been judging was actually my bathroom mate that cut me off, that I didn't make that connection till the end. Lovely person. I
Yeah.
never should have judged this very lovely soul.
Yeah.
And it just was unbelievable. Unbelievable. I never could have imagined that this could have happened to me
Yeah.
in my life.
Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. The energy that I feel from you just talking about it, is fantastic. So one of the reasons that you go into the retreat is to try and get a semblance of understanding of your stress, your reaction to stress, your management of the stress. How has your approach to stress? You mentioned there it was 8 years since you've been in the retreat. How has your
Yeah.
approach to stress and stress management evolved since the retreat?
Oh gosh, it's made a huge difference in my life. I'm a completely different person. I I have transitioned through so many things. So mindfulness to me was a huge takeaway.
Mm.
And what that looked like for me was, so backing up just a second. When I came home, I was in my glorious, awakened, enlightened state.
Yeah.
And that, and as days turned into months, after maybe 3 months removed, I started to get so depressed. And I was like, I have to have that feeling again. I was just yearning to feel that again. And I didn't know how that was going to happen.
Mm.
So there was a moment of serendipity that made me find this book that was just crazy how it happened. And once I got into that, and then I started reading more and got kind of more reading about mindfulness, I understood really what it meant to be mindful. Whereas when I had started the mindfulness based stress reduction course, I didn't get it. Like, I couldn't figure out how, if something bad is happening right now, how does mindfulness help me if I'm living this?
Yeah.
But I now understood that by living in this moment, it's so rare because we're usually thinking about something in the past, worrying about it, regretting, or worried about the future, something that's going to happen. Where right now we're in this safe space.
Yeah.
Like, I could be worrying about all of these things, and instead I'm having this lovely conversation with you.
Yeah.
And when I try to explain it to people, this is the best way that I can. So you and I and Fred go to a cafe in Calgary. It's just lovely.
Yeah.
And we are at separate tables, but right next to each other. And I'm in my head completely worried about my son who just started college in another state. and I feel my stomach getting upset and like my heart is beating faster, and I'm all in consumed with that. And then there's Fred to my right, who is like reliving the fight that he had with his significant other last night and wishing he didn't say the things that he said, and feeling the sadness and the grief of that happening, even though it isn't happening right now, but it happened. And then there's you drinking your coffee and just looking at the beautiful blue sky and listening to the birds and enjoying the taste and the scent and the smell and feel of what's around you. We are all in that same space. We are in that exact same moment, but we're having such different experiences. And by being mindful and thinking, okay, I know that I planned well for my son. He's ready to go to college. It'll be what it's going to be. It'll work out. And being here now with you in the cafe,
Yeah.
and letting that man say, I learned from my mistakes. I shouldn't have said those things. This is how I might rectify it. But coming up with a plan to have mastered or at least learned something about the experience. But you don't have to feel that now. Coming back to the present moment. And I didn't realize how much I was spending outside of the present moment.
Yeah.
So after I read a couple books about it, I set a timer on my phone. And I had it going off all day long at different times, like 9:16, 10:43, 11:27. And every time the alarm went off on my phone, it was ding. And I would stop and say, what are you thinking about right now? And I would be damned if every single time I was not in the past or the future. I was never in the present moment.
Yeah.
And I was like, nope, nope. So then I didn't need the ding anymore, because I just was trying so hard to stay conscious and like constantly bringing myself back. And I mean, it's been almost a decade and I'm still working at it. I know I'll never not get lost in my thoughts. It's impossible.
Yeah.
But to be able to say, I'm safe and I'm here right now, and I'm just thinking about this thing, it's not what's happening right now, it has made a tremendous difference in my life. And like I would say that is definitely one of the biggest takeaways, besides the whole metacognition piece that's a little bit separate and apart from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask about awakening and enlightenment and just a pivotal moment. And you kind of alluded to it earlier, and I want to make sure that the listeners don't miss it. You mentioned that you had a serendipitous moment with the initial book that created
Yeah.
this enlightenment, which then inspired future study. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was amazing. So like I said, I was starting to feel very depressed about not having that feeling again. It felt like it didn't even happen. It was becoming this distant dream,
Yeah.
because I was so back in the humdrum of the heaviness of the work. And um, so on Mondays, I used to walk. Ate at my desk many days because I didn't have time to really take a lunch. So on Mondays, I would take a lunch and I would walk to the Trader Joe's down the street and get salads and fruit for my mini fridge in my office for the week. And this one day, I was feeling really down, and there was a used bookstore right next door to the Trader Joe's, and it's called Unicorn Books. And I'd never been in there. And I'm like, I'm going to go in there and just see if there's any spirituality, book in there, or metaphysical something I can read that'll help. So I asked the store, I had a very nice conversation with the store owner, and he points me in the right direction. And for an hour, I am like going through these self-help books, going through. And they were all like saying the same thing. Nothing was resonating with anything new that I hadn't read before.
Yeah.
So I'm just about to leave, and I look up, and I actually have the book here. I see this book. It is no jacket, beige beat up book. There's something on the spine, but it was high and far away. I couldn't read what it said. But for whatever reason, I'm like, I have to see that book. So I go and get the owner. He gets the ladder, he gets the book, and it's called After the Ecstasy, the Laundry by Jack Cornfield. And I opened this book, and the quote that I read was talking about how enlightenment is real and how it's so common to feel this deep depression afterwards. Like, he was laying out exactly what I was feeling.
Yeah.
I just started crying. I am not a crier. I know I've mentioned that twice. I'm a pretty steadfast, type A personality that I'm working on that too. But I couldn't believe that this book was saying this to me. So I'm like, okay, I was led here. The universe led me here. And I was not a spiritual person really before I went to the retreat, but I was like, I was totally led here. I read the book. I mean, this is my new like Bible affirming what happened to me is real.
Yeah.
And then it led me to more Jack Cornfield, and then it led me to Thich Nhat Hanh, and then it led me to other self-help like, Colleen Barrett Reed and Gabby Bernstein. And I started like branching off into these different areas. And all of them had these nuggets of things that I'm like, I could try this. This will help me. And just bringing them all together over the last 8 years with little practical practices
Yeah.
that just have made such a huge difference in my life. But that was it. That was a pivotal moment, because I felt like if I wouldn't have found this book, I know I would have just gone deeper into a depression, because I didn't know how to handle what was happening to me.
Yeah.
And I was so desperate to feel the positive again and feel all of the good. And the funny thing too is, when I told my family and my closest friends, my parents, what happened with the dark night and the enlightenment. The people that I were acquaintances with that went on the retreat with me, not with me, that knew I was going on the retreat, they were like, "How was it? What happened?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it was amazing." Da da da. I told them some surface thing, but some people actually were like, "Oh, there was drugs in the food. You were hallucinating because you were given mushrooms. There were subliminal messages in the night, in the evening discourse summaries." And I'm like, "No, there wasn't. There just wasn't." So a big part of my research after that was like, I needed to know what happened to me. Like,
Yeah.
how is this physically possible scientifically?
Yeah.
And I realized that all of that constant concentration on those tiny little spaces was just loosening this blocked negative energy that I had just pushed down and suppressed. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, like I'm such a compartmentalizer. Like, this awful thing happens, and okay, it's time to move on. You put it in a neat little box and you set it over here and you don't deal with it, right? It's not gone.
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling it through those things. I was just pushing them to the side and pushing them down.
Yeah.
And I really think I literally was vibrating, 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 and loosening up all of that blocked and stuck energy. And that's what the dark night was. It was the release of all of this garbage that
Yeah.
was just inside. And what a fabulous release, right? Like, to be able to say, take it, just
Yeah.
take it all away
Yeah.
and replace it with positivity and goodness and love and light. And it just, I mean, I know I keep saying this. I could not have imagined this. I could not have made this up.
Yeah.
It just, the way that it unfolded before me, I know my purpose in life that I did not know before. And it is to share that this is possible. And there are ways that people can change their lives and change their way of thinking. When I went back to work as a hearing officer, I wasn't black and white. You broke the rule. Here's the consequence. I mean, the rules still had to be followed,
Yeah.
but I had such a different counseling kind of perspective and compassion for them being stuck in their story. Like,
Yeah.
they couldn't see that they could step away and choose differently.
Yeah.
And it just, the compassion, just like, it hurt my heart to see them going through this and not knowing how to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially such a high pressure, intense event that hearings like that would be. You're dealing with people's lives, as you say, their story,
Yeah.
and the amount of stress and preparation and supposition and probably catastrophizing that people would put into that before they even get into the conference room. And then you're there as the, okay, lay down the facts, here are the rules, here's how
Yeah.
we're going to apply this. To then, did you have any discernible notice in terms of the results prior to your retreat and your enlightenment and then post enlightenment?
You mean with the employees?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, uh, it, I kind of equate it to, like if you work at a school and you see the kids in the dean's office, the repeat offenders that
Yeah.
keep coming through,
Yeah.
they're now grown up. So they're the adults that are just still making the same stupid mistakes
Yeah.
and really bad choices in their job.
Yeah.
And I was so stern before, like the word of the law. And so I understand that this happened to you. I understand that this is why you needed to feel that way and do this thing, but it was wrong and it can't happen again, period. Now, with the way that I was talking to them and the hearings, the union opened up to me more. We had a lot more, definitely conversations that moved in a positive direction. The employees would come in and they would be like, "Oh, I was hoping you weren't my hearing officer because I'm trying so hard. I don't want you to be disappointed." Like they had a different connection now as a person. Like we had a person to person connection.
Yeah.
And I was still the rule of law that was important, but I had just so I felt for them now. Like I didn't, everything was black and white before, and nothing is black and white in life.
Exactly.
Like I just feel like as a person, I'd grown so much,
Yeah.
even with my own family and with my own challenges. Like,
Yeah.
and tried to explain to them and everyone that your life, your mistakes don't define you.
Yes.
The fact that you can see that you did this thing and the consequences you're dealing with, and to understand that it wasn't the right reaction. Now you just have to notice when you're doing that and try to step away and calm down and look at it from a different perspective. Perspective is everything. It
Yeah.
is everything.
Yeah.
And it'll change your life if you take a breath
Yeah.
and like just to understand that you have a choice when they didn't think they had a choice before
Yeah.
makes a huge difference.
And in terms of the overall structure, still affirming the reliance on the rules, but
Yeah.
there's different ways to satisfy the rules. There's different ways to get to the rules and showing that compassion. I imagine, your journey of compassion, starting with self-compassion, in some way manifested itself once you're on your journey and appreciating how challenging that can be sometimes, and then saying, wait a second, if that's me and I'm going through my enlightenment journey, what about these folks who I have zero understanding genuinely of
Exactly.
their journey, and just having such a difference in perspective, as you mentioned there. So in terms of,
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier about metacognition,
Hmm.
and so how is your understanding and awareness of your own thought process, your own thought processes, excuse me, influenced your actions and decisions since you became aware of metacognition?
Yeah. So I read a book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And that to me brought me a whole new awareness. And that's when I started getting into Eckhart Tolle and all of the others that talk about thinking. And I've come to learn, and it's made such a huge difference for me. And I'm trying to get my kids there. I'm trying so hard as a parent, right? I want to just like open their minds and pour in what I know. Because if
Yeah.
I knew now what I knew when I was 20, I would be unstoppable. But you are not your thoughts. And your thoughts are going to come. That was the biggest mistake I was making when I was meditating. I was beating myself up because I'm like, I keep thinking, I can't clear my mind. But I learned that the thoughts are going to come. They're going to constantly come, but they're neutral. They're nothing. It's just like making a statement like that's a blue shirt, right?
Yeah.
It's your thinking about the thoughts where you create your own ego story about that person doesn't like me because of this reason. You see the way that they looked, or maybe they rolled their eyes, and you're like, oh my gosh. And you create this story that's not even true. And when you realize, like when I didn't know what metacognition was, and when I really started looking into what it was, I'm like, oh my gosh, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Like I take a situation and it could just be a thought that I now blow up into this whole thing about why this is happening. And I have no reason to think that. Like it's because of my own self-conscious fears,
Yeah.
right? And judgment of self and lack of compassion for self, that, oh, it must be because of this.
Yeah.
And to learn that we are not just our thoughts, but even a bigger umbrella. Integrity to me means everything. And if you can think and act with integrity, that it's not just for your ego self that you're serving. And you really can say to yourself, with every decision you're making and every the words that you say before you say them, is this really for positive integrity? Is it for the good of all, or is it a selfish need?
Yeah.
The whole metacognition thing has broken apart my ego self and my higher consciousness. And I'm hyper aware of it in everything that I do. I think before I speak now.
Yeah.
I listen with intention. And it's just, if it wasn't for metacognition, I wouldn't understand the separateness of the ego and how it really dictates so many negative things in your life.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I'd actually like to ask you a little bit more about that. Like, what are the challenges that we have as human beings, balancing, acknowledging, firstly, identifying, acknowledging, balancing the ego to get us to a spot where we can achieve higher consciousness, and live a more intentional, way.
Yeah. Um, so I think that the only way to balance is to first know that it exists and recognize when it's happening.
Right.
So for me, judgment was a huge thing. I was very judgy, and I was so judgy about myself, and I was so judgy about others. And I mean, I'm almost 60. I have another, say, 40 years left to go, hopefully, right? I will still be working on this when I'm 100,
Yes.
because it's all part of our learning and growing experience on this playground of life.
Yeah.
But if you can separate yourself from the ego story that is constantly rattling away at you and just notice it and be like, no, that's just what I'm thinking. That's not real.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference, because then you don't let yourself get embroiled in this whirlwind of a crazy story and start reacting in a way like this really happened when it didn't. It's just all up here.
Yeah. It's so fascinating as you say that, because one of the challenges I've had over my lifetime, quite honestly, is the judgment, is the stories, born from the ego, Denise. And one of the challenges that I have with that is that a lot of the time my stories were correct. So I had a high success rate in saying, I can tell you exactly why he's doing that, exactly why she's reacting like that, and exactly what's going to happen. And I was kind of right most of the time. So then when I have this, I guess I could say in inverted commas, success, then there's little need to dissect it or digest it or investigate it any further. And it's only having meaningful conversations with people like yourself that I think that's a lot of luck and, applying a little
You
bit of
know what, though? I
reality.
don't think it's luck. I think
Oh,
that is an intuitive ability. I
right.
think you're in touch with your intuition. I think everybody has some form of intuition.
Yeah.
We have a sixth sense. You have a gut feeling about things. And some people have more of it than others because they've developed it, or just because they're very aware of it.
Yeah.
And I think that what you just explained to me is exactly that. I feel now that I'm very similar to that. I can walk into a room and read the energy and know who is going to be the troublemaker in a meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have no knowledge of these people beforehand or of the
Yeah.
situation. You're feeling something because you're in touch with your gut. You're in touch with your higher level thinking. Wow, that's weird. Another light just came on out of nowhere. Did you see the difference in the screen?
I did, yeah.
That is so bizarre. There
Wow.
you go.
I
See,
think,
there's
you know what,
something
this
happening here.
it feels like it is, and
We're co-creating.
it really does. It really does. And if I have a higher level of intuition, that seems like a wonderful place. Like that compliment, I'm going to take it gratefully. Thank you
Oh,
very much
you
for
take it
that.
and you run with it. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, just before we wrap up, I know that you do have a special offer for the listeners coming up here. But before we get to that, where can the listeners find you?
Yeah, so that would be great. So right now I am mostly on TikTok and Instagram, and then underscore and enlightened life is my line that you can find me with.
Yeah.
I do have a website that I'm working on. It's up, but
Yeah.
it's enlightenedlife.com. And I'm working on my book. I'm it's about 2/3 of the way done, but I really want to get a publisher. I really want to try to do this without self-publishing. So I'm
Yeah.
starting the tedious task of looking for a literary agent and trying to get the word out there about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have a website, An Enlightened Life, and I have published a children's book about serendipity. It's on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. It's called At the Perfect Moment: A Story of Sweet Serendipity, and I illustrated it and wrote it. And I would love to give one of them away for free to anyone once this podcast airs. If everybody would just, anyone who comments on your podcast, or when I post clips about it on mine,
Yeah.
when we put it out to the world, I'll have a drawing and I will give them a free copy of my children's book with a dedication in it. So that would be kind of fun. Yeah, but I'm just I feel so blessed to have the opportunity to talk to you about this and to meet you in the first place,
Me too.
because I feel like we have such a connection that, you know, this is fascinating work, isn't it? Being
Yeah.
able to get out there and meet people you wouldn't normally meet and talk and have conversations about something that's just so intriguing.
100%. I couldn't
I
agree
just love
more.
it.
It's been absolutely fantastic, Denise. Thank you very, very much for taking
Oh,
the
thank you
time.
so much.